Hello and welcome to Letters from the Light Side. Slight technical hitches, getting myself organised, mainly because I'm just back from Orkney and trying to gather myself from a long journey home. However, still feeling that it's important that I speak on behalf of all of those who are here to guide us, here to support us, and just to pass on their messages of love and support. So I'm not in my usual spot, and it's a little bit noisier here, but hopefully what they want us to say will come through okay. Well, it's certainly been an interesting week. There's been a lot of what I would call revelation energy. In other words, truths coming to the surface. There's also been a lot of restlessness, and you may have found yourself, particularly in the past 2 or 3 nights, finding that it's been quite difficult to rest, to relax, to sleep, maybe even feeling a little bit apprehensive and not exactly knowing quite why that feeling is there, looking around and thinking, well, you know, everything's kind of okay, but as if old fear is still kind of dogging you a little bit. Now, we are running into the energy of a new moon, and we're running into a period of strong. Important to be aware of that strong energy, that manifesting energy, because we have to use it, obviously, whenever anything appears that gives us a chance to get what we desire. Then removing anything that is of a fearful nature or a negative nature is very important. So thinking about what has been with you and the thoughts and feelings you've had in this past week, it's worth recognising the old fear. What is it that has been dogging your footsteps? What has been holding you back? This is particularly important in terms of what has been holding you back. Thinking about what attitude, what self-belief, what stops you in your tracks, kind of makes you feel like you can't do the things you want to do, and what really scares you. It's hard for us sometimes to think about what really scares us. Sorry for the wavery camera angles. I am looking at the screen, but it looks a bit odd. And it's like looking at your life with a little bit of a slant, and kind of going, oh, what's haunting me a little bit. It's interesting because I've been to Orkney, long journey, fabulous place to visit, but before I set off I was a little bit apprehensive. Those of you who managed to catch the video last week, I was up at 5 AM to do it, and I couldn't rid myself on the way there. Sorry, some guide is digging in my ears. I couldn't rid myself of this sort of tinge of apprehension, all these plans that I've got to get there and all the plans to get back, and it was as if I was waiting for it all to kind of collapse somehow, and it didn't. It all went beautifully. The journey up, the journey back has been very smooth, but it was as if I didn't trust the universe would make it work, and that's interesting because obviously I do a lot of trust in the universe, And it made me stop and think and recognise that it wasn't so much I didn't trust the universe, it didn't trust me either. Old fears, sort of even a sense of, and this may have been kind of with you this week, of if it isn't perfect, if it doesn't absolutely hang together as I planned, somehow it's all going to be a disaster, it's all going to be wrong. So it's important to recognise this, and it's important to recognise that feeling is there with all of us. And I'm just going to acknowledge Fiona, who's sending me lovely little bubbles of love. Thank you, because that's what we do find so difficult, is to send ourselves the bubbles of love. Even when everything is going perfectly okay, we are still doubting. We're still somehow in the background apprehensive. And we're needing to shift that into this reality of, I mean, I knew even if it went wrong, we'd sort it out. There was no great big danger in it all going wrong. Hello, Fiona. But this is the theme of the week, trusting yourself enough to know that whatever happens, it will sort itself out, and realising what old fears are still lingering, that need to go, that need to be set on one side. It's very hard to acknowledge in yourself that you're good at things, because we're so used to being told we're not. And one of the issues my guides had with me was to try to help me to understand that what I do is real. What connection I have with them is real and honest and true. And that sense of speaking on their behalf took them absolutely ages, because I was doubting myself all the time. And I do think that we live in times where the doubt is bigger, it's more noticeable, it's more prevalent than not. So think very carefully about where you doubted yourself this week, because that's your old fear. That's your old fear raising its head and saying, sabotage yourself in a sense. I do want to say that we are in this process where the truth is coming out. But the truth has to start with us understanding who we are. Please feel free to send me a friend request. That's fab, because on my wall I put lots of different things from time to time. But one of the pieces that caught my eye was from a gentleman who was writing about what light workers do, and something that I find so true. Light workers have to live what they believe. You can't just say, yes, I'm a light worker, I believe in love and light, and hiya Gemma, you can't be someone who is saying I am spiritually evolving if you don't acknowledge those times where doubt comes along, because doubt is useful. Doubt is a way of showing you that you don't believe in yourself enough, and that's okay. And it's also showing you that there's a little bit of work to do, that your shadow side needs to be explored and embraced and understood a little bit more. That's important, because how can you give the best of yourself if you still think that you're not worthy, or if you still think that the best of you is to do nothing and hide away from giving? So, an interesting week. What you may also have found is lots of thoughts about what I call home and hearth. Certainly for me on Orkney, I went to see quite a few of the Neolithic sites and the Bronze Age sites, and it's interesting and startling to think that people lived at that time 5,000 years ago pretty much the same way we live now. They wanted to have a family around them. They wanted to have connection with one another. They wanted to have a roof over their head. Their concerns were pretty much the same as all of our concerns. And that's a really fascinating thing to think about. They weren't off making war, particularly. They were living in their settlements, bringing their crops in, looking after their animals, and just wanting to have the continuity of life. And I think that's so important to us, to find ourselves connected into the web of human existence. And I know that that's one of the things that I need to connect with in this message for this coming week. I've been joined by a lovely archangel called Samish, and he always comes to me feeling like a grandfather, and he brings that deeper understanding of continuity. No matter how much we doubt ourselves, no matter how much we worry about what we're doing in our life and where our life is going, we want to make that connection with one another. In fact, that's a key part of spiritual work, spiritual service, connecting, sharing, being there for each other. And sometimes we forget that, and particularly with national and international events, we forget that we are all of one nature, really. We're all under the skin, we're all human. So we are going to notice over the coming week reminders of connecting. The angels are going to draw closer, the guides are going to draw closer. Whether you can sense it strongly or not, it doesn't really matter. They will be around and encouraging and prompting you to notice the way that you're connecting with other people, to notice the conversations that you have, to notice that it's so much more productive if you are positive. It's so much more productive if you speak your needs and acknowledge other people's needs, and then work together so that everybody's needs are met. One of the villages, the Neolithic villages that we went to, was really interesting because it was a very small settlement at Scarabray, only 8 houses, but they were all interconnected. The rooms were kind of, or the dwellings had tunnels between them and covering between them. And for me, it brought home the understanding that we rely on each other, and that's very, very important, to share that sense of connectedness. Hi Liz, hi Jan, to understand this coming week that we are part of a wider community, and that what affects one person affects all of us. And I think sometimes we get lost off in our individuality without stopping to think about where it affects everybody, how everybody is affected. Particularly, one of the issues that I've seen scrolling through on some of my news feeds is about this idea of how do we care for the vulnerable in our societies. An issue that is being faced in many industrialised, what we would call rich countries, where our our sense of helping one another is kind of restricted by, well, if I give to them, I won't have enough for me. I'm thinking particularly about health services, where there is this idea of restriction and this idea that we can give too much. And yet, what the universe is trying to say, what same as she's trying to say, is we're growing a garden here. This garden can be as beautiful or as miserable as we make it. We have to tend for every plant in that garden. The plant that is new, the plant that is old, the plant that is thriving, the plant that isn't. That there has to be space for us all to acknowledge each other and to share with one another. So in this run-up to the new moon energy, you will have to notice this. I don't think it's anything. I just feel like we can't escape this necessity to help one another, to help ourselves, but also to help one another, to be of service to all of us, and that includes me. You know, I haven't got to forget me in all of this. I'm a plant in the garden too. So where there's an opportunity in this coming week to give and receive, you're being encouraged to do that, to give and receive. I have to say there is some huge debate going on in the Guides and Inspirers, because it's a question of, are we ready? Have we learned enough about ourselves to say we're all the same, and to say it doesn't matter what's going forward in the world, we are treating one another the same. We are going to live side by side with one another in a way that is helpful and supportive. So watch for these things coming up in the coming week, chances to help, but also chances to be given help. And remembering that your voice is about protecting those who can't at this time help themselves. Putting your energy into encouraging children, all children, it doesn't have to be your children. Putting your energy into respecting our elders. They have a story to tell. In fact, listen to the stories. Listen to the stories of the little ones, listen to the stories of the older ones, to see the thread of similarity. We're not looking for differences, we're looking for similarity. And hang on to that similarity. I have a sense that this is a big challenge, particularly Monday and Tuesday. You may find yourself feeling like you're walking outside of what everybody else thinks in your circle, but that's okay. Remember, what goes around comes around. So if you want to get the best from others and from the universe, give your best. Give it to you and then give it to them, and share with everybody. Don't hold back on saying things or asking for things. That's my cat, by the way, nothing spooky. Be in there as the person giving their best and receiving their best. There are some more revelations on the international stage, and I feel that what is revealed on Tuesday and Wednesday has the ability not just to shock people, but to get people finally into action, to get people past this sense of, well, it's okay, it goes on somewhere else, it's on another continent, or it's in another town, I don't have to be bothered. Remember, if it's happening to you, it's happening to everybody else. If it's happening to everybody else, it's happening to you. We are in a flow of energy. The world is energy. We are part of the connectedness to each other. And when each of us stops caring, when each of us steps back and says, I'm just going to be an individual me, then that disrupts the energy web. It creates the wrong energies. It sends the wrong message. Think about the positive you can contribute. Don't think about how it can go wrong. Think about the positive. Think about the events on the world stage as a reflection of what we are thinking about ourselves. Switch your attention to seeing things as they really are, and switch your attention to what can I do with myself and with others to change these things. In the new moon energy, you may find your voice, and I do hope sounds like a song, that, doesn't it? Sorry. That's Samish. He and I have a sort of on again, off again relationship, and it sometimes gets me a bit. It's important to him that you use what you have been given. It's important for all the guides and inspirers to encourage us to find our voice, use our voice, give voice to what we are feeling, recognise the similarity, recognise where we are the same. Don't recognise the difference. Think about how we can be who we are as that integral member of the community. Because this is what's fascinating about Scarabray and that little settlement. Each person had a place, each person had a purpose, but it was a community purpose. And many of the Neolithic sites have that feel to them. Whatever life was about, no matter how hard life was, there was a deeper connection to that sense of rightness of being in that community. I know that we are moving to that understanding of community on a global level. It's lumpy and bumpy. It's going to be lumpy and bumpy until people kind of get used to looking out for one another, but looking out for themselves as well in a balance. So when you send out your new moon wishes, when you ask for things to come in, remember as well to ask, what is the best thing I can do for my community? And to make sure that you do your best in the way that's right for you. I haven't been able to read the comments that have been going on while I've been speaking, but we have to step back this week, this coming week. Step back, acknowledge yourself, acknowledge your place in your community, acknowledge that there is a community of spirit, acknowledge that we're all like-minded, and acknowledge that it doesn't matter what we say to each other, really, it's what we do. That's the most important thing. Are we wishing for the whole of our community, or are we still stuck in our own self? Are we still stuck in old fear? Are we refusing to give voice to the power that we have and the change that we can make in the world? The fact that we can be a difference, the fact that we can do things that help us to grow, painfully at times, but help us to grow, to be real, be authentic, and to be like our ancestors, aware of the spirit within, aware of the love that that spirit brings to this planet, and aware that it is our purpose to share the love. Because underneath everything underneath all the other energy that's flying around, are people who have love in their hearts, sharing their everyday concerns, going about their everyday business, wanting to make sure that everyone around them also gets that share of love. There is no shortage of resources. This is what we have to see. There is no shortage of time or energy. There's no shortage of love. There's no shortage of anything. Samish takes you back to the garden again. And he says, look at this world. Look at this beautiful planet. It has everything you could possibly need. It's not for it to be amassed into one person's hands. It's for a community to share. And we have to start taking care of ourselves and all of those around us with that understanding of community. And that does mean that if we have to, we stand up to the bullies. That does mean we stand up to the negative people. That does mean we say, no, that's not acceptable to me. It does mean that we may have to take a little bit less in order to say we want a little bit more, in order to give a bit more. As the truths tumble out this week, there's something really important going on, and that's in our children. We need to help them to have a better world. They are so much closer to the truth than we are at the moment because we're conditioned by this world. Listen to the children. Listen to the way that they've been hurt and harmed and restricted and given fear. Make your energy powerfully loving and positive, because that's the root that conquers all fear. Remind yourself that you are a beautiful being creating a very positive and powerful community of spirit, a global community of spirit, and that the choices you make create that better world, create the world within you as a better world, and the outer world will shift too. I hope that's made sense. I can't even remember half of what I've said because that's the way that the energies work with me. They'll get me chatting away, so I hope it makes sense. I hope that you have a good week. Please don't live in the fear. Move yourself into the love. Remember, the human spirit endures. Here we are, 5,000 years. Well, actually, there's been a report about the lovely Aboriginal inhabitants of Australia who look like they went there 65,000 years ago. So here we are, all those thousands of years. Happy life this week. Live as if nothing else matters but love, and let yourself shine and be beautiful. Of course, I will be back next week, but in the meantime, send me a Facebook friend request if you wish. Share the video to anybody who you think might be interested. My daily blogs are at www.annieconboy.net, and have a great week. Whatever's happening, remember to look after you. Thank you all of you, those who joined me, and I'm going to go and have a well-earned rest now. Still a bit knackered. Would love to return to Orkney, but maybe not tomorrow. Have a good evening. Bye.